So how can we use the Body Life Skills program to support a person with an autism spectrum disorder to reach their full potential? Well, before I go into that, let me just talk a little bit about autism spectrum disorder and the way in which we approach it at Fabic. Unfortunately, the word autism spectrum disorder is followed by the word disorder, and that interpretation from many people is often that means something's wrong. At Fabic, we do not see a person with an ASD as being anything wrong. We see them exactly the same as every single person in the world. And that is that we see everybody, that we all have our own set of strengths and we have our own set of weaknesses. And the reason why a person is diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder is because there's a lot of people who have similar weaknesses, and so therefore with all these people who have the similar weaknesses, it has been decided that they meet the criteria for this disorder that today we call an autism spectrum disorder. But a person with an autism spectrum disorder is no different to you or I, because we also have our own set of strengths and weaknesses. It just so happens that at the moment our weaknesses may not be ones that meet the criteria for a formal diagnosis. But when at Fabic we're working with a person with an autism spectrum disorder, we do not see them for their disorder. We see them for their strengths and their weaknesses. We see them for who they are. We see them for the awesome, amazing, lovable being that is innately inside of them. But the way that we work with an autism spectrum disorder is almost seeing it as though that person is experiencing the world like you or I would experience if we went to a different country and needed to live in a different culture. So let's say, for example, we've got a person that lives in Australia and we've got a person that lives in, let's say, Russia. Could be Japan, Russia, could be any other country. But if I was to take a person from Australia and to take them into Russia and say, this is where you're going to live from now on, instantly their anxiety levels would increase. Why? Because the way in which the people in Russia experience the world, the language that they use, the way in which they socialise and interact with other people, and everything else about the way they experience the world is different. But different does not mean wrong. So is it possible to take this Australian to go and to live in Russia and for them to live at Code Blue? Absolutely so. All that's required is the opportunity for that person to develop the skills so that they feel equipped to respond and to live in the environment that they're currently in. But ASD is no different. Yeah? Even though we might have two people who have an autism spectrum disorder from the same country, they're actually experiencing that same world very, very differently. Yeah, the person with an ASD perceives social interactions very differently to the way that a person without an ASD perceives the world, perceives the social interactions. And equally, the way that the person with an ASD communicates, expresses or receives communication from others is often vastly different to the way that a person without an ASD receives the world. And there's many other differences of the way they experience the world, just simply through their own unique strengths and weaknesses. So at Fabic, the way that we approach a person with an ASD is based on identifying what's that person's strengths and what are their areas of weakness. The areas of weakness are just simply the parts of life that they actually need to develop the skills, where their same age peers may naturally develop those skills. That's all it is. So when we've got a family or a school or people who are working or have a person with an ASD within their group, the way we approach it is by bringing understanding and connection to each person. So on this side, we have a person who has an ASD who perceives the world in their own unique way, meaning that their experience of the world is different to their same age peers, but different does not mean wrong. Different just means different. Then we have this group over here, the people who may not meet the criteria for an autism spectrum disorder, and they equally perceive the world in their own unique way. And these two ways are often different. But often what we do when we're supporting a person with an ASD, or our traditional approach, is that they come here and they say, well, let's merge the two together. And often there's a crashing, often there's a difficulty of what's occurring, and the anxiety levels increase. But the way that we approach it at Fabic is not based on saying this way is wrong and this way is right and you've got to come and fit in. It's about saying we're going to take this group and we're going to support them to understand themselves, and we're going to support them equally to understand this group. And then we're going to take this group and we're going to support them to understand themselves and equally support them to understand the other group. And together, with both the understanding of themselves and each other, they can come together and connect in a way that creates more of a harmony rather than a disharmony, saying that you've got to come to the party and play it our way. So our approach of working with a person with an ASD is, yes, teaching people the skills so that they are able to integrate into the world in a way that they feel safe, so that they feel connected, so they feel comfortable to be themselves, while equally supporting them to understand other people, but never from the approach of saying, your way is wrong, you must fit our world. It's about coming from an approach of understanding. And the key is always knowing that, yes, this person may have weaknesses, but they also have a bucket load of strengths. And with those strengths, they're able to offer to the world an amazing amount of potential. So our goal is to support this person to live their full potential by offering them the opportunity to develop the skills to be who they are in this world.